I want you to picture this. It's 11:40 on a Tuesday night, I've had 2 beers I didn't need, and I'm sitting on my kitchen floor with my back against the cabinet because the couch felt too far away to walk to. I had just found a box of my ex-girlfriend's stuff in my hall closet, a phone charger, a hair tie, a receipt from a burger place we used to go to on Sunday nights. And instead of doing what any reasonable person does, which is put the box by the door and go to sleep, I opened my messages and started typing out 3 months of things I never said out loud. My name is Ryan Coleman. I'm 32. I fix commercial HVAC systems for a living, which means I spend my days inside other people's ceilings, and I spend my nights, apparently, making the worst decisions of my adult life. Vanessa and I had broken up 7 weeks earlier. Not dramatically. Nothing got thrown, nobody screamed. She just looked at me one night over a plate of pasta neither of us finished and said she didn't feel it anymore, whatever it was supposed to be. I said okay. I always say okay. That's kind of been the theme of my whole life, if I'm honest. So there I was, floor of my kitchen, box of her old junk next to me, typing out a message I never should have sent to anyone. Something about how I found her charger, and it made me think about how she used to fall asleep with the TV on and how I used to stay up just to turn it off so she wouldn't wake up cold. It was long. It was raw. It was the kind of message you write at midnight and regret at 7 in the morning. I hit send before I let myself think twice. That was my first mistake. My second mistake, the one that actually mattered, was that I sent it to the wrong person. See, months earlier, my sister had added her best friend to my contacts because we were all supposed to go in on a birthday gift together, and somehow, through whatever chaos happens in a phone's memory, her name ended up sitting 1 row above Vanessa's. Same starting letter. Same blurry thumbnail photo, because neither of them had ever set a real one. I didn't notice. I was 2 beers deep and grieving a relationship that had already been over for weeks before it officially ended. I sent that whole aching, embarrassing, half-drunk message to a woman named Claire Bennett, who I had met maybe 4 times in my life, always in passing, always for a few minutes at a family thing or a barbecue, always just my sister's friend from college who happened to still be around. I didn't realize what I'd done until my phone buzzed 20 minutes later. I almost didn't look. I figured it was Vanessa, and I braced myself for whatever she'd say back. Instead, I saw a name that made my stomach drop somewhere near the floor I was sitting on. Claire Bennett. I think you meant to send this to someone else, but for what it's worth, that was really beautiful. And also, I'm not the person who left you, so maybe don't apologize to me for something you didn't do wrong. I stared at that message for a full minute. Then I read it again. Then I sat up straighter, like my body understood something before my brain caught up, and typed back the only thing that felt honest. Me. Oh my God. I am so sorry. That was supposed to go to Vanessa. Claire, I gathered that. Charger and hair tie kind of gave it away. Me, this is mortifying. Claire, a little. But also kind of sweet in a sad way. Are you okay? I want to be clear about something. I did not expect a real answer. I expected either silence or a polite little haha no worries and the conversation dying there, the way these things are supposed to die. Instead, Claire Bennett, a woman I barely knew, sat with me through a message that was never meant for her, and asked if I was okay like she actually wanted to know. I told her the truth. Not okay. Kind of a mess tonight. Found some of her stuff, had a couple beers, made bad choices with my phone. Claire, understandable. Boxes of an ex's stuff are basically landmines. You should throw the charger away first. Chargers are the worst. They're just useful enough to make you keep them around out of guilt. That made me laugh out loud, alone on my kitchen floor, which felt strange and good at the same time. We kept talking for another hour. Not about Vanessa, mostly. About nothing really. Her job, she worked as a physical therapist at a sports clinic downtown. My job, and how people are always shocked that HVAC work involves crawling through more attics than pipes. Somewhere in there, without either of us deciding to, the conversation stopped feeling like an accident and started feeling like something else. Before I put the phone down that night, I typed one more message. Me, I'm sorry again that you got that text. But I'm not sorry we talked. Claire, neither am I. Go throw away the charger, Ryan. I did. First thing that box went in the trash. right along with everything else that used to remind me of a version of my life that had already ended. The next morning, I woke up with a mild headache and the specific kind of dread that comes from remembering you sent an embarrassing paragraph to the wrong person the night before. I checked my phone half expecting the whole thing to have been a fever dream. It wasn't. There it was, right at the top of my messages, Claire Bennett, still sitting there like proof that I hadn't imagined any of it. I almost didn't text her again. That's the truth. I sat with my coffee for a solid 10 minutes trying to talk myself out of it, telling myself that whatever had happened the night before was a fluke, a kindness extended to a stranger having a rough night, nothing more. People are nice like that sometimes. It doesn't mean anything. Then my phone buzzed on its own. Claire, how's the head this morning? I stared at that message longer than I probably should have. Then I smiled, which felt like a strange thing to be doing over a text message at 8 in the morning, and typed back. In more ways than one. How's it feel knowing you accidentally became my midnight therapist? Claire, honestly? Kind of an honor. Not everyone gets access to that level of unfiltered honesty. Most people just get small talk from me for at least the first 3 conversations. Me? Guess I skipped the line. Claire, you crashed the line. There's a difference. That set the tone for the next 2 weeks. We texted every day. Not constantly, not in that overwhelming way where your phone won't stop buzzing, but steadily, the way water finds its way into every crack in a sidewalk without you noticing until the whole thing's split open. She'd send me a picture of a ridiculous dog she saw on her lunch break. I'd send her a photo of some poor commercial buildings ductwork that hadn't been cleaned since the Clinton administration. She told me about a patient who cried tears of joy the first time he climbed a full flight of stairs after knee surgery. I told her about growing up the youngest of 3, always the one patching things instead of breaking them. I found out things about Claire that had nothing to do with my sister at all, which felt strange at first, because for years she had only ever existed in my head as an extension of someone else. Megan's friend Claire. The one who came to Thanksgiving twice because her own family lived out of state. The one who laughed loud enough that you could pick her voice out of a crowded room. I had never actually looked at her. Not really. Not until a wrong text forced me to. About 2.5 weeks in, she sent something that shifted things. Claire, can I ask you something and you don't have to answer if it's weird? Me? Go for it. Claire, do you ever think about the fact that if I hadn't replied that first night, we probably never would have talked like this? Like actually talked? I thought about that question longer than I've thought about almost anything. Me too. All the time, honestly. Feels like something that should have happened a long time ago and just needed the universe to shove us into it. Claire, that's either really romantic or really unsettling. I can't decide which. Me, can it be both? Claire, it can absolutely be both. We met up for coffee 3 days after that conversation. Not a date, technically. Neither of us called it that out loud. But I ironed a shirt for the first time in over a year, and she showed up wearing lipstick, and neither of those things happens by accident when you're just meeting a friend of your sister's for coffee. She was already at the table when I walked in, hands wrapped around a mug, hair down instead of the ponytail I always saw her in at family things. She looked up and smiled, and something in my chest did a slow, unfamiliar flip. You look nervous, she said before I even sat down. I am a little nervous, I admitted. This feels different than texting. Good different or bad different? I pulled out the chair across from her. Good different. I think. You think? I'm pretty sure. She laughed, and it was exactly as loud and unguarded as I remembered from every holiday dinner I'd half paid attention to over the years. We talked for 2 hours that should have felt like 20 minutes. She told me about physical therapy school, about the year she almost quit and became a baker instead, about how she still keeps a sourdough starter alive in her fridge just out of stubbornness. I told her about the divorce my parents never officially finalized, just quietly stopped living together until it became normal, and how that taught me to be careful with people, maybe too careful. You don't seem careful, she said. You sent your ex a whole emotional paragraph at midnight. I sent you a whole emotional paragraph at midnight. Fair point. She tilted her head, studying me in a way that made my ears warm. I'm glad you did though, even if it wasn't on purpose. Me too, I said, And I meant it more than I'd meant almost anything in months. When we left the coffee shop, we stood outside on the sidewalk in that awkward, charged silence where neither person wants to be the one to say goodbye first. "So," she said, "this was nice. It really was. We should do it again. On purpose this time. Like, actually plan it, instead of you being tipsy about your ex." I laughed. "Deal. No tipsy required." She smiled, and for a second I thought she might hug me or I might hug her, but instead she just squeezed my forearm once, quick and warm, and turned to walk to her car. I stood there on the sidewalk for a solid 30 seconds after she drove off, feeling like something in my life had just quietly rearranged itself into a shape I hadn't seen coming. That's when I should have called my sister. I knew that even then. I knew Megan would want to know, would probably be thrilled, honestly, because she'd spent years telling me Claire was one of the good ones. But something made me hold off. Maybe I wanted to protect it a little longer before it became a conversation everyone had opinions about. Maybe I just wasn't ready to explain how a wrong number turned into the best 2.5 weeks I'd had in over a year. I should have known that in a family like mine, nothing stays quiet for long. It came out 3 weeks later at my mother's house, over a pot roast dinner that was supposed to be completely ordinary. Megan showed up late, dropped her bag by the door, and before she even sat down, looked at me with an expression I recognized immediately because I'd been on the receiving end of it since childhood. It was her onto something face. "So," she said, sliding into the chair across from me, "Claire told me something interesting today." My stomach dropped straight through the floor. "Did she?" I said, aiming for casual and landing somewhere closer to strangled. "Yeah." Megan reached for the mashed potatoes like this was a totally normal conversation. "She told me you two have been texting. For weeks. And that you got coffee." My mom's fork paused halfway to her mouth. My dad, who mostly stays out of these things, suddenly became very interested in the pot roast. "It's not a big deal," I said, which was a lie, and everyone at that table knew it. "Not a big deal." Megan set her fork down slowly. "Ryan, that's my best friend. My best friend since college. The one who slept over at our house every other weekend when we were 20. You've known her for years as my friend and suddenly she's someone you're texting until midnight." "It happened by accident," I said. "I texted her instead of Vanessa. It was a whole thing." "Oh, that makes it so much better," Megan said, and I couldn't tell if she was actually mad or just processing out loud, which with Megan can look identical for the first 5 minutes. "You drunk texted my best friend a paragraph meant for your ex, and now you're what, dating?" "We're not dating. We got coffee once." "You ironed a shirt for it," she shot back. "I know you, Ryan. You don't iron for anyone." I didn't have a good answer for that, mostly because it was true. My mom finally spoke, gentle in the way she always is when she's trying to keep a dinner from turning into a fight. "Megan, honey, is there a reason you don't want this to happen? Because from where I'm sitting, that sounds like a nice thing." Megan's jaw tightened. "It's not that I don't want it. It's that if it goes wrong, I lose both of them. Do you understand that? If you two date and it falls apart, I don't just lose my brother's happiness, I lose my best friend from every family dinner, every holiday, every single thing for the rest of my life. You get to walk away and heal. I have to sit in the middle of it forever." That landed on me harder than I expected. I hadn't thought about it from that angle at all. I'd been so wrapped up in what this thing with Claire felt like from the inside that I hadn't stopped to consider what it looked like from the outside, from the person who'd have to live with the wreckage if it went badly. "I hear you," I said quietly. "I do. But Megan, I'm not doing this carelessly. I like her. Actually like her, not rebound like her. And I think she might feel the same." "You think," Megan repeated. "I know," I corrected myself, because in that moment, sitting at my mother's table with my sister's worry hanging over the pot roast, I realized I did know. I'd known since that sidewalk outside the coffee shop. Megan was quiet for a long moment, pushing food around her plate. Finally, she looked up. "Just don't make me pick a side someday. That's all I'm asking." "I won't," I said, and I meant it, even though I had no idea yet how hard that promise would be to keep. Things got more complicated about a month after that dinner. right around the time Claire and I stopped pretending we were just casually seeing each other and started actually calling it what it was. We'd had 4 real dates by then, actual planned ones, dinner, a hike that turned into us getting lost for 40 minutes and laughing the whole time, a night where she taught me to make her sourdough starter come alive into an actual loaf of bread that came out slightly burnt and somehow still the best thing I'd eaten in months. The complication had a name. Derek. He worked at the same clinic as Claire, a physical therapist a couple years older than her, and according to Megan, he'd had a thing for Claire for well over a year, quietly, patiently, the kind of guy who waits for an opening instead of making one. I met him for the first time at a birthday party for one of Claire's coworkers, a backyard thing with string lights and a cooler full of beer that Claire had dragged me to, introducing me around as her boyfriend, which was the first time she'd said that word out loud, and it did something warm and unsteady to my chest every time I thought about it that night. Derek found me by the cooler about an hour in. Tall, easy smile, the kind of guy who probably played college sports and never quite let go of that energy. "You're the boyfriend," he said, handing me a beer I hadn't asked for. "Ryan," I said, shaking his hand. "Derek." His grip was a little firmer than it needed to be. "Claire and I go way back. Work-wise." "She's mentioned you," I said, which was mostly true. She'd mentioned him twice, in passing, nothing that had raised any flags. "Has she?" Derek took a sip of his beer, watching me over the rim of the can in a way that felt less like conversation and more like an evaluation. "Funny how things work out. I asked her out, about a year ago. She said she wasn't interested in anyone from work. Then a few months later, boom, boyfriend." I didn't love where this was headed, but I kept my voice level. "Guess timing matters." "Guess it does." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "She's a great girl. Smart, funny, way too good for most guys who try. I just hope whatever this is with you isn't some rebound thing that fizzles out in a few months and leaves her picking up the pieces. She's had enough of that." There was not quite an insult, not quite a warning, but close enough to both that I felt my jaw tighten. "It's not a rebound," I said. "And I don't plan on giving her pieces to pick up." "We'll see," Derek said, clapping me once on the shoulder like we just had a friendly chat instead of whatever that actually was, and walked off toward the food table. I didn't tell Claire about that conversation right away. I probably should have. But something about it felt petty to bring up, like I'd be making myself look insecure over nothing. That decision came back to bite me 2 weeks later. We were at a work thing this time, one of Claire's clinic holiday parties, and Derek had clearly had a few drinks by the time we arrived. Claire had gone to say hi to a coworker, leaving me standing near the drinks table, and Derek drifted over again, louder this time, looser with his words. "Ryan, my man." He clapped a hand on my shoulder hard enough that I had to steady myself. "How's the fling going?" "It's going well," I said evenly. "It's not a fling." Sure. He grinned at a couple of coworkers who drifted closer, sensing entertainment. Claire told me once that she has terrible taste in guys who disappear the second things get real? I just hope you're not one of those guys, HVAC man. Or is it AC man? I always forget. A couple of people laughed. Not cruelly, just the reflexive kind of laugh that happens when someone confident makes a joke at a party. I felt heat crawl up the back of my neck, that specific kind of anger that comes from being made small in front of a room. Claire appeared at my side before I could respond, her face already tightening with recognition of exactly what was happening. "Derek," she said, sharp. "What are you doing?" "Just getting to know your guy," Derek said, holding his hands up like he was innocent. "Making conversation." "That's not conversation, that's you being drunk and rude," Claire said. "Apologize." Derek's easy smile faltered slightly. "Come on, Claire, I'm just messing around." "You're not," she said, and her voice had a steel in it I hadn't heard from her before, not once in the months I'd known her. "You've been doing this since we started dating. Little comments, little digs. I've let it go because I didn't want to make it weird at work, but I'm done letting it go." The small crowd around us had gone quiet, the way people do when they sense something real is happening instead of just party banter. Derek's face reddened, embarrassment finally catching up to whatever confidence the alcohol had been fueling. "I didn't mean anything by it," he muttered. You did, Claire said. And honestly, that's your business to sit with. But you don't get to make my boyfriend the punchline of your bad night. She turned to me, her expression softening instantly, like a door closing on one version of her and opening on another. Are you okay? I looked at her, at the way she'd stepped in without hesitation, without checking to see if it would be awkward first. I'm good, I said. Better now. Derek muttered something that might have been an apology and slunk off toward the bar. Claire watched him go, then turned back to me, arms crossed. I'm sorry, she said. I should have shut that down the first time it happened, not the third. You don't have to apologize for someone else's behavior, I said. Maybe not. But I let it slide because I didn't want to be dramatic at work. And that's on me. She reached for my hand. For what it's worth, everything he said back there wrong. All of it. You're not a fling. And you're definitely not disappearing. Good, I said. Because I wasn't planning on it. We left the party not long after that, and in the car on the way home, Claire was quieter than usual, staring out the window at the passing streetlights. Can I ask you something? She said eventually. Anything. Are you scared this is going to fall apart? Because of Megan, or Derek, or any of it? I thought about that question honestly before answering, because she deserved honesty, not just comfort. I used to be scared of everything falling apart, I said. That's kind of been my whole deal. Vanessa, my parents, all of it. I got really good at expecting things to end before they even really started, because it hurt less that way. I glanced over at her at a red light. But I'm not scared of this ending. I think I'm more scared of how much I don't want it to. Claire was quiet for a second, then reached over and laced her fingers through mine on the console between us. Good, she said softly. Because I don't want it to either. There was a stretch of about a week after that holiday party where things got quiet between us in a way I didn't like. Not a fight, exactly. Nothing either of us could point to and name. Just a distance that crept in the way fog does, slow enough that you don't notice it until you can't see the other side of the room clearly anymore. I think it started because I brought up Derek again, 2 nights after the party, when I probably should have just let it go. We were on my couch, some show neither of us was really watching playing in the background, and I asked her, out of nowhere, whether she'd ever actually considered saying yes to him back when he first asked her out. Claire went still in that specific way people go still when a question catches them off guard. Why are you asking me that? I don't know, I said, and that was honest, because I genuinely didn't have a clean answer ready. I guess watching him at that party messed with my head a little. Made me wonder if some part of you ever wondered what if. Ryan. She sat up straighter, turning to face me fully. I told you no the first time he asked, and it wasn't a close call. It wasn't me sitting around agonizing over it. I said no because I wasn't interested, full stop. I know, I said. I believe you. I don't know, I felt small at that party. Standing there while he made jokes about disappearing and being some rebound thing, and I didn't say anything, and I've been sitting with that feeling ever since. Claire was quiet for a moment, studying me. You didn't say anything because I handled it. That was me protecting you, not you needing protecting because you're weak. Those are different things. I know that too. Logically. I rubbed a hand over my face. It's just, my whole life, I've been the guy people describe as steady. Reliable. And it's never once been said to me like it was a compliment. It's always said right before someone explains why they're leaving anyway. And some ugly part of my brain heard Derek say all that and thought, here we go again, here's the guy explaining why I'm not enough before Claire even gets the chance to figure it out herself. Claire's expression softened, but there was something firm underneath it too. I'm not Vanessa, she said quietly. And I'm not going to spend our whole relationship being compared to whatever she made you believe about yourself. That's not fair to me, and honestly, it's not fair to you either, because you're carrying around a story that isn't even about us. She was right, and I knew it even as the last of my defensiveness tried to argue otherwise. You're right, I said. I'm sorry. I think I got scared and instead of just saying that, I turned it into a whole thing about Derek instead. Scared of what exactly? That eventually you'll want louder. Like Lauren wanted louder. Like Vanessa wanted more exciting. that being steady runs out its usefulness eventually and everyone moves on to something shinier. Claire reached over and took both of my hands in hers, waiting until I actually looked at her before she spoke again. "I didn't fall for you because you're loud," she said. "I fell for you because you texted a complete stranger the truest, saddest, most honest thing I'd ever read from someone I barely knew, and then when I called you out on it, you didn't get defensive or disappear. You just kept showing up, exactly as yourself, every single day since. That's not boring, Ryan. That's rare. I've dated loud. Loud gets exhausting by the third month. You don't exhaust me. You steady me. Those aren't the same thing, and I need you to actually believe that, not just hear me say it." I didn't have words ready for that, not right away, so I just pulled her into me and held on for a long minute, feeling something in my chest loosen that had been tight since that party. "I'm going to need you to keep telling me that," I admitted into her hair. "Probably more than once." "I plan on it," she said. "For as long as you'll let me." We didn't solve everything that night, not in some clean, movie-ending kind of way. But something shifted. I stopped flinching every time Claire mentioned a coworker, stopped bracing for the moment she'd wake up and realize she could do better. And she started telling me, unprompted, in small ordinary moments, the specific reasons she'd chosen to stay after that first accidental text instead of just being polite about it and moving on. It's a strange thing, learning to believe someone means it when they choose you. I'd spent so long treating love like something that got revoked the second I stopped being useful that I almost didn't recognize what it looked like when someone stayed simply because they wanted to, not because I'd earned it through some invisible scorecard. Claire taught me the difference, slowly, patiently, the same way she taught me to keep that stubborn sourdough starter alive, a little bit of attention every single day, not some grand gesture that fixed everything at once. The real test came about 2 months later, at Megan's engagement party. She'd gotten engaged to her longtime boyfriend Josh that spring, and the party was a big deal, both families, most of Megan's college friends, including, of course, Claire, and by that point, including me too, though I was there specifically as Claire's boyfriend rather than just Megan's brother tagging along. Megan had been warming up to the idea of us for a while by then, but warming up and fully comfortable are two different things, and that night, standing near the dessert table, she pulled me aside with the particular urgency she gets when something's bothering her. "Can we talk for a second?" she asked. "Sure." She glanced over at Claire, who was laughing with a group of her old college friends across the yard, then back at me. "I need you to actually mean this. Not just the version you tell me to make me feel better. Are you serious about her? Because I watch the way she looks at you now, and it's different than how she used to look at anyone else. If you're not all the way in, you need to tell me now before this goes any further, because I can't watch her get hurt by someone I brought into her life by accident." I looked at her, really looked, because I understood in that moment that this wasn't Megan being difficult or overprotective for no reason. This was my sister, who had spent years watching her best friend get overlooked by guys who weren't paying attention, trying to make sure I wasn't one more name on that list. "Megan," I said, "I know I sent that first text to the wrong person. That part was an accident. Nothing after that has been. Every date, every conversation, every time I've picked up the phone to text her instead of scrolling past her name, that's been on purpose. I'm not halfway in this. I haven't been halfway in it since that coffee shop." Megan studied my face for a long moment, the way she used to when we were kids, and she was trying to figure out if I'd actually broken something or was just covering for a friend who had. Whatever she found there seemed to satisfy her, because her shoulders finally relaxed. "Okay," she said. "I believe you. Thank you. But if you hurt her," she added, pointing a finger at my chest, "I will tell everyone at every future family dinner for the rest of your life about the time you cried during that dog movie in 8th grade. That's low. That's fair warning," she said, and for the first time in months, I saw something like real relief in her face. Later that night, after most of the guests had thinned out and the string lights overhead had started to feel less like decoration and more like the only light left in the whole yard, Claire found me sitting alone at a table with 2 drinks, one for each of us. "There you are," she said, sliding into the chair beside me. "What did Megan want earlier? You two looked serious." "She wanted to know if I was serious about you," I said. Claire raised an eyebrow. And what did you tell her? That I've been serious since the coffee shop. Maybe since the night I accidentally texted you at midnight and you didn't just leave me on read like any reasonable person would have. Claire smiled, that same unguarded, too loud for formal settings laugh threading through it even quietly. I almost did leave you on read, you know. For about 30 seconds. Then I read the whole message again and thought, this guy is either a mess or he's the realest person I've talked to in years, and I wanted to find out which. Which did you decide? Both, she said. Turns out it can be both. I reached over and took her hand, the same way she'd taken mine in the car after the party where Derek had made his comments, the same steady grip that had somehow become one of the most familiar feelings in my life in under a year. I need to tell you something, I said. And it's going to sound fast, but I don't think it is, not really, not when I think about how long we've actually been building toward it, even before either of us knew we were building toward anything. Claire went still, watching me carefully. Okay. I don't think I want to keep calling this dating anymore, I said. I think I want to just be building a life with you. I know that's a lot to say out loud at your best friend's engagement party with cake frosting on my shirt, but I've never been more sure of anything, and I didn't want to wait for some perfect moment to say it, because I've spent enough of my life waiting for perfect moments that never came. Claire's eyes filled, but she was smiling too wide for the tears to actually fall. Ryan Coleman, she said, are you telling me you accidentally fell in love with your best friend's sister? I'm telling you I fell in love with the person who told me to throw away a phone charger instead of being weird about it, I said. And that person happens to also be my sister's best friend, which honestly, at this point, feels less like a complication and more like the whole universe just making sure we ended up exactly here. She leaned in and kissed me, right there under the string lights, with Megan's engagement party still humming quietly around us, and for once in my life, nothing about the moment felt uncertain or fragile or like it was about to be taken away. It just felt like the truth, finally catching up to where we'd already been standing for months. We got married a year and a half later, in the same backyard where Megan had gotten engaged, because Claire said it felt right to close the loop where it had almost fallen apart and instead came together. Megan was my best man, technically my best woman, though she insisted on the title anyway, and she gave a toast that started with the words, "My idiot brother texted the wrong person one night, and it turned out to be the smartest accident he's ever had." Derek wasn't invited. That part, at least, everyone agreed on without discussion. Claire still keeps that sourdough starter alive, somehow, for years running now, stubborn as ever, sitting in our fridge like a small, quiet proof that some things, once you commit to keeping them going, just keep going. And every once in a while, usually late at night, usually when neither of us can sleep, she'll bring up that first message, the one that was never supposed to reach her. "Best wrong number I ever got," she says every time, like it's a joke we haven't worn out yet. "Worst decision that turned into the best one," I always answer. And she always says the same thing back. Can it be both? It can. It absolutely can be both. So here's what I want to know from you. Have you ever sent a text to the completely wrong person and had it change your life instead of ruining it? Have you ever had a family member's friend turn into something you never saw coming, and had to sit through the awkward conversation of telling someone you love that you fell for someone close to them? Tell me your story in the comments. I read every single one of them. If this one hit you somewhere, do me a favor and hit like, subscribe if you're new here, and I'll see you in the next video.